boredom, obviously, and with ourselves or with our children who can't go to school right now. I hope you liked my interview yesterday with Jake Tawney of the Great Heart Schools on advice for parents with children at home. If you missed it, you can go to 960thepatriot.com for the interview. We post everything there as we post these monologues. As for you and your children, my thought is take advantage of the time. I love the idea of music practice, but we often lament here the state of literacy, cultural, and otherwise as well. Might there be a better time to do what we do best when we want to and become autodidacts, people who educate themselves and teach themselves? We've gone through several generations now of downgrading and replacing what was once known generally as the Western canon. Part and parcel of this is the downgrading and distorting of learning our own country, its wonders, its history, sure, its faults, but also its wonders. American history remains, after all, still our children's worst subject. It translates outward and upward, as you know, if you listen to this show. The New York Times is on a campaign to make us more stupid about American history and to learn wrong things about and from it. It's a terrible crime. But where did it come from? It came from generations of our schools teaching wrongly and misdirecting. You've heard me say, and I think it's worth reiterating, the reason we care so much about what's going on at our campuses is because they shape and they mold. Say what you want, but they also teach. They can teach rightly and right things, and they can teach wrongly and wrong things. And we believe what's taught at our campuses matters. The idea used to be you go to school to train for your life, your professions, your families, your civic engagements. Well, why do we wake up surprised to find millions and millions of students went through these schools, these teachings, these systems, and now take what they were taught and bring it to bear in adult, postgraduate, civic, and work life? Teaching sticks for good and for ill. So does behavioral instruction. You heard me say yesterday that this is now the effect of what 2 generations of soaking our children in intellectual Purell and bubble wrap has caused, and now the rest of America. First, words hurt, then ideas, then election outcomes. All required safe spaces, isolation, and protection from words, ideas, and then a protest against the election outcomes. And when the first whiff of upset or fear comes, we, too many, retreat to safe spaces with everything. Or we go to war, in a civil war, by declaring our leadership illegitimate or an existential threat. It's a civil war because it's waged against our fellow Americans. How else do you describe the most prominent Southern Congressman, James Clyburn, this week, saying Donald Trump reminds him of Germany in the 1930s? How else do you describe Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib retweeting a statement yesterday that said F, ! Our National Day of Prayer? This is how a culture disappears. This is how history gets distorted. Here's what happened in our campus, on our campuses. Truth, real truth, was dispensed with and doubted, and it was replaced with ideological certainty. Alan Bloom put it this way in his closing of The American Mind, quote, "There is one thing a professor can be absolutely certain of. Almost every student entering the university believes or says he believes that truth is relative. If this belief is put to the test, one can count on the students' reactions. They will be uncomprehending. That anyone should regard the proposition as not self-evident astonishes them, as though he were calling into question 2 + 2 = 4. These are things you don't think about. The students' backgrounds are as various as America can provide. Some are religious, some atheists, some are to the left, some to the right. Some intend to be scientists, some humanists or professionals or businessmen. Some are poor, some rich. But they are unified in one thing, their relativism." He goes on to explain, "The students, of course, cannot defend their opinions. It is something with which they have all been indoctrinated. But this has shifted and turned since Alan Bloom wrote that. Yes, truth is still relative, but right thinking politically is not relative. It comes with a hardened certainty, not to mention demagoguery. So conservative thought, as it is now called, is dangerous or extreme. It can even be fascist. And so it must be banned or marginalized. That is the truth students, and now too many adults, subscribe to today. The discovery of all liberal thought, though, all progressive thought, the thoughts most of us, you and I, disagree with but have captured so many millennials, has come about by one ironic thing the progressives now disdain: free thought and inquiry, ethics and rules of reason that stem from academic freedom and the First Amendment. ethics and rules of reason that came from, wait for it, the West and Western philosophy. Now, having taken advantage of those ethics, they choose to roll them up and put them away and deny them to anyone and everyone else. Philosophers used to worry about these things, the problems of open societies and how their weaknesses and strengths, depending on your point of view, could be taken advantage of and used against it or against us. But it was only Western cultural philosophy and, frankly, American jurisprudence that supported philosophical and liberal inquiry and self-doubt. Why? Start with Plato if you like. Go to Jefferson if you like. I think the notion is captured well by one of the great jurists of the last century, Learned Hand, who said this in the midst of World War II. He said, "The spirit of liberty is the spirit which is not too sure that it is right. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which seeks to understand the mind of other men and women. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which weighs their interests alongside its own without bias. The spirit of liberty remembers that not even a sparrow falls to the earth unheeded. The spirit of liberty is the spirit of him who nearly 2,000 years ago taught mankind that lesson it has never learned but never quite forgotten, that there may be a kingdom where the least shall be heard and considered side by side with the greatest. And now in that spirit of an America which has never been and which may never be, which will never be except as the conscience and courage of Americans create it, yet in the spirit of that America which lies hidden in some form in the aspirations of us all, in the spirit of that America for which our young men are at this moment fighting and dying, in that spirit of liberty and of America, I ask you to rise and with me pledge our faith in the glorious destiny of our beloved country." Close quote. That's how liberals used to think, because they got it. They got what Jefferson got, that we are all legitimate in holding diverse opinions. That's over. We are not legitimate because, get this, we actually like the words of the Constitution and are trying to put them back into our judicial opinions and reasonings. The New York Times this Sunday called such efforts extreme, meaning the thought of James Madison must be extreme. The thought of Earl Warren and William Brennan and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, this is what the law of America must be. Any deviation, any dissent, extreme. This is part and parcel of the view that just, no other way to put it, hates America first. Why else are there tweets making fun of and criticizing Mike Pence and his coronavirus advisory committee opening a meeting in prayer, but not a word about the mullahs in Iran opening their meetings in prayer? Why else condemnation of Donald Trump for being responsible for the spread of the coronavirus here, but condemnation of us when we point out the origins and maladministrations and lies that actually was and were the vector of this pandemic, tyrannical China? Note well, just fine to call the president an anti-Semite or worse, never a condemnation of real tyrants. More on how it was criminal to kill Qasem Soleimani, for example, nary a peep about the crimes against humanity Soleimani perpetrated. Trump wants to close the border, racist, xenophobic. Canada does it. Honduras does it. Others do. Silence. Today, the government of China just banned all reporters from the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Washington Post. Now, if you type into Google Trump war on media or Trump war on press, you will get, I kid you not, over 258 million hits. How many times do you expect CNN or other outlets to condemn China for this action today? Half of that? Don't bet on it. Don't bet on it even being close. If it makes it into 10 mentions on CNN, I'll be surprised. This is how minds are trained, right? Enough times you say Trump is evil, in the absence of saying true evil regimes are evil, and of course soon you have created the mindset that we are worse than China, or at least deserving of more condemnation. So resist this and turn it around. Do what the schools have stopped. Teach America, teach the West. Where to start? I like the advice of American historian David McCullough. He gave it to Congress a few years ago. He said The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, St. Vincent Benet's John Brown's Body, Frederick Douglass's autobiography, Ben Franklin's autobiography, speeches of Chief Joseph's, Lincoln's second inaugural address, Grant's memoirs, selections from Shelby Foote and Barbara Tuchman, the wonderful prose of Francis Parkman, the Oregon Trail. The list could be indefinite. Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, on and on. These are all not only major events in the history of our country, they are great literature. They have survived the test of time just as literature of a conventional kind has. And this could be exciting. This could bring young people and their teachers into a love of history, which is essential. For if we raise generation after generation of young Americans who are historically illiterate, we are running a terrible risk for our country. You could have amnesia of a society, which is as detrimental as amnesia of an individual. But of course, that truly is the plan, isn't it? And as that great philosopher Graham Nash put it, our job is to teach your children well. I'm Seth Leibsohn. We'll be right back. Hey folks, thanks for watching my monologue. I'd like to encourage you to visit Guns Etc. They're strong supporters of our president and the principles our country was founded upon. Guns Etc. is 10,200 square feet, and it's a firearm lover's paradise. And for all your online firearms needs, just click on gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks.